So in the previous movie, we have our animated character walking in place, but obviously you might want to walk him across the screen. Very common thing to do. So let's see how we can do it. We could, of course, move each frame individually. What a nightmare that would be. So the system that I've been using, and I'm sure there might be a better way of cycling this. Again, there's some KRITA veterans out there that might shudder, but let me show you the method that I figured out. First thing, I want to get rid of the timing charts just to make life a little easier. Now, I would actually keep them, but I think just for the purpose of this demonstration, it'll make the bounding box a lot more simple. So one thing that we can do is to tween each frame across the screen. We can right click on here and add a transform mask, and then we can transform each frame across the stage. The problem with doing that is that we have to do that for every frame, and what a nightmare that would be. So we go here and make a new group layer and drag the walk rough into here, and we'll just call this walk cycle. And just so that we can really clearly see what layer we're working on, I'm going to make this like red. We can make it any color we like, but now you can see the layers that we have that we're dealing with here. So we're working on the walk cycle layer. I can collapse that now. We're going to apply the transform to the group, and then everything inside the group will be affected by that. So the first thing that I want to do as well is extend these exposures so that we have a slightly longer range, because right now it's only cycling for 1 second. Keep it simple. We'll just make 3 cycles. So I'm going to extend the timeline first. Right now we're on 25. If I extend it 3 times, and if my mathematics are right, I think that might be 75 or close enough. Let's shift select all of these and drag, holding down the Alt or Option key, and then drag it again. And I think we're about on 73. So let's just go to here and make it 73. So now when I play this, check again, make sure nothing broke. I think we're good. So now on, stop please. So now on the walk cycle, right click, add transform mask. So now when we go to frame 1, we have our keyframe, the transform mask. So I think this is an issue of having to use the animation curves layer. So we go to frame 1, go to animation curves, and type in 1 here, so we are on the right layer. If this timeline looks too big, click on these and hold the mouse down, and I'm dragging down now, and that is compressing our timeline. We can make them bigger or smaller. So I find this very, very unpleasant to use, but once you figure out how it works, then that's okay. So now we need to make a keyframe here. Add a keyframe to scale our property. Let's click on this guy here and drag him back, holding down Shift, hit enter. And now I'm going to go to the final frame, which I think is 73. Click on this chap here and just drag him across. You'll see that red line floating, and hit enter. You'll see this red line moving, and that's giving you a visual representation of the layer. So we can again drag that in, so now we can see it. So now we go to frame 1. So he is moving, so I think I just didn't move him far enough. So now let me go to frame 1 and see if I can simply apply to this layer. There may be KRITA veterans out there like shaking their heads, but to me this is like very clunky behavior. And I don't file this under the word intuitive. So I'm going to make a new keyframe here, move him to there, hit enter. Back to the timeline. Now we have 2 keyframes here and here. This should work. Bingo! So I'm going to leave all that crud in because so you can see some of the frustrations that I had when I began doing this. I'm certainly not starting at an easy level. I've seen tutorials where people do it with a single image, like a ball, and those are really good. So I do have another movie further back. If you look in the playlist, you'll see it, where we show how to do that, and I linked those other movies. Now, the thing to watch here is the foot placement, and I think I got really lucky. I don't think the feet are sliding too much. So let's go through frame by frame. Oh, I need to be on the, I think I need to be on the walk cycle group layer for this to work, or the walk rough layer. Let's see if that'll work. There we go. And they seem to be holding their position fairly well. There are little wiggles in there, and I think those are the result of errors in my animation. But see how the heel for most of this stuff seems to be locked, like bang. I'm seeing my finger pointing there. It's not moving too badly. I could probably reduce the problem a little bit by clicking on the transfer layer here. Maybe I can drag it a little further over. But when you see it locked for 4 or 5 frames and then moving slightly, that means there's a flaw in my animation. At some point when I did these feet, I wasn't perfect enough with my foot motion. That's the kind of thing I will clean up. But we are very close. This is within 95%. And for a lot of people, this will be good enough. We have a solid walk cycle in rough form. We have used the transform mask to tween the animation as a cycle across the screen. I'll flag one other thing too. I'll make sure I'm working on the right layer here. So we have our walk rough layers selected. If I click on the contact pose again, we have these diagonal lines. That's telling you this is a clone. So any change that I make, if I clean this drawing up, this one, and this one will be cleaned up as well. And I'll prove it to you because you don't believe me, because you think I'm a liar. I'm drawing here. Why won't it let me do that? I might have to switch off this accursed transform mode. Ah, look at that. So the transform mode won't let me draw. That was my big schnoz that I just drew there, unless I drew it on the wrong layer. So let me just go back into here, play this with the transform mode switched off, and we have our typical cycle animating in place. And now if I want to give him just an eye, you'll see the eye will now appear when I go to this one, this one, and this one. So I don't have to redraw. Bink, boink, boink. So you'll see the thing appearing as we go to each one of these. Let me switch transform mask back on again, and I think, yeah, look at that. It will not let me draw. I think we should be able to draw with the transform mask on, but I suspect there's probably very difficult challenges in terms of fixing that in programming. So it would be great if that were a feature, but you can live without it. You can actually work without the transform mode on, and you can add all the extra features if you want. So it's good to know where the limitations are as well. So if you do need to fix something, you got to switch the transform mask off. And I'm noticing too, like you can see the little line going. So again, if I click on the passing position, you can see it's the same as this one, and it's the same as that one. This passing position is the same as this one and that one. So the alternate low point, low point, low point. So it flags the cycle, it flags the reuse. And again, it's also non-destructive. Let me show you something else that's very cool. Almost forgot this. So let's go back to the first one. We go back to the walk cycle, and I think we should work on the transform mask for this. Let's say I want to do something radical. And before I do this, because I like what I've got here, I'm going to save this. File, save as. So let's go to this and say we need to make him smaller. So we just make him smaller, really small. And now when we play, and of course I need to make the change to the other key. So let's go to here. I might need to delete this one, and I might need to do it here. And there was a delete keyframe here, so let's just do that. And now when I go back to this point, I'm going to make a change again. Again, I regard this as being an interesting tool, but a little on the glitchy side. So you just have to work around the glitches. It's not as quite as responsive as I would like, but look at this. This is still pretty cool. You can see that we've got this tiny guy now. Let's zoom in, and it looks like we've just destroyed all those beautiful pixels. Let's go back in now, go to frame 1 and go transform it again and bring it back, and they're all still there. Nothing has been damaged. Actually, I can go back to the small one and just switch off the mask, and you can see it's all still there. So it's very close in some respects to being like a smart object in Adobe Photoshop, where you can scale things, rotate them, resize them, whatever, and you're not destroying the pixels. So if you have an animation where you want like a run cycle coming from far away, right out the camera, you can tween it and scale it in the program without destroying any artwork, with the usual caveat that it is kind of tricky to use. Anyway, that's how to use the transform mask to take your walk cycle and have the flexibility of seeing your animation either in place, resized, or traveling across the screen like this incredibly well animated scene. So I think that's pretty much for this one, and we'll move on and I think maybe start to tie it down, or we keep adding stuff to this very loose animation. I'm not quite sure which. We'll find out in the next movie. I don't have a sponsor, so if you want to support my work and help it to continue, you can subscribe to my Patreon. I'm making new animation projects week by week and providing animation assets that can be downloaded and used. I also have a very large collection of tutorials in the LinkedIn Learning Library covering animation and design, and I'm putting all the links to these in the notes below.